Juxie, and today we're going to be doing a fluxing video because a lot of you have asked how to do it, and it's the sort of thing you definitely need to do before you do a multiple reflow of your BGAs. Now, briefly, the reason why we flux BGAs is because basically when this board gets pasted, that's before the bits are actually placed on the board, the solder paste has a percentage of flux in it anyway, which helps the solder mount and form into a proper joint. It also helps it attach itself to the pads. Now, when it gets put through the big surface mount oven, the paste turns into solder, the flux sucks it to the pads, and then you get a really nice joint. Now, when you're reflowing surface mount components, you can get away with reflowing them without using flux, but as you guys out there have possibly not done the reflow properly the first time, the second, maybe third time you try and reflow them, obviously every time you warm it up you're burning the flux away from the solder. Now, solder without flux is not good. Basically it makes the solder go dry and it starts to crack, which is the reason why we're getting yellowed anyway. So in effect, if you keep reheating the board up without the additional add-in of flux, you'll actually create more dry joints than you're actually fixing. Okay? So if you're going to do a multiple reflow, i.e. if it's going to be your second or third attempt at reflowing the board, you really need to get hold of some flux. Now the flux I use is pen form, lead free. Okay? Now, this is also a non-clean flux. The reason why it's a non-clean flux is because standard flux is very aggressive, and the reason why it's got to be aggressive is because it actually eats into the pads ever so slightly and then helps the solder then adhere itself into the pad. Now, aggressive flux, i.e. normal flux, is fine to use so long as you wash it off afterwards. If you leave any residue on the board, it will, if left, will eat its way into the solder joint and the pad and can destroy the board. So this is why we always use no clean flux. It means you haven't got to clean it afterwards. Okay? So, this is how we do it. First things first, get your board, this side, not the BGA side, this side. Okay, and we want to apply flux to those two and those two. We're not going to do these areas with the flux because there's only capacitors on those areas and we don't want to flux the capacitors. We want to flux the BGAs on the other side, which we'll do afterwards. Okay, so just these two we're going to do first, and how you do it is get your flux pen and let's get it so you can see it. And what we want to do is put the flux pen above the chip like that. Okay, and pump, and you'll see the flux. You see the flux? You see it now coming down through the bottom there? Yeah. You see it glistening just there? Okay, put a little bit in the middle. Okay. So that's one fluxed. Then we're going to do the one underneath. Again, pump it if you have to. Okay, the flux will run underneath. Can you see it coming out the bottom there? Yeah. And then in the middle, flux that one. Okay. Okay, so that's fluxed both of those BGAs. Then what we're going to do is you put it on a flat surface like you did the guide, and you reflow it with a heat gun. This time it's got to be 400 degrees and an extra 10 seconds on the heat. Okay, so once you've done that, that area and that area, and then the opposite sides of the BGAs, warm them up as you would the guide, then leave it for the appropriate time to let it cool down. Right, then we're going to flux the other side of the board. Same again here. You want to do these two and those two, and this time we're going to do the two big BJs as well. Okay, so as per the other side, get your flux pen, pump it, okay, let the flux run under, like that, flux the middle, flux run under, same with them, okay, and then that one, and that flux will run underneath. Now for the BGAs. Now these, obviously because it's a bigger chip, takes a whole lot more flux, so pump, okay, can you see that? Okay, then for the next one, just to hold that a bit differently. Okay, alright, same again, stick that on a flat surface, follow the guide, reheat it to 400 degrees, extra 10 seconds on the heat, and you should have cured that problem. Okay, once you've done that, there's another tip as well which is going around on the internet, which I'll show you now, and that's these clamps. Okay, there's two of them. What they do is they clamp the fan assembly onto the motherboard. What you want to do is get your clamp like that, right? 2 thumbs in the middle, 2 fingers on the outside edges, and bend them. Okay? Doesn't look like you've bent them much, but believe me, it'll be enough to apply that extra bit of pressure onto those BGAs. So get the other two, the other one, and bend them. Okay, that's that one done too. And when you rebuild it all, it should be fine and dandy, and should work for a very long time. Okay? Some people do add washers to those clamps. You can try that if you like, but I believe that bending them on its own is more than enough.